And one. All right, welcome to Sarah Homework. Today I am reviewing Hereditary with the lovely Aggie. Go ahead and say hi.
Hi, I'm Aggie. Welcome.
And she actually recommended this movie. Why this movie?
I really like, so the director and writer, Ari Aster, he's only done 2 feature films and like 4 or 5 short films. So his 2 features were Hereditary and Midsommar. And I first saw Hereditary, I think it was like a year ago or a year and a half. And I just absolutely fell in love with it. I felt like it was so different from any other like horror or suspense film I'd ever seen. Because like everything in the film is intentional, like all of the imagery is intentional. There's like clues throughout the movie about, that foreshadow what's coming. And it's just like, you have to watch it more than once to really understand the whole thing. And I just really like films that kind of make me think and that I have to like look up like what it means afterwards because I didn't quite get it. I find that those are the most engaging and just like exciting films for me. And then Midsommar came out and I was like, okay, I'm an Ari Aster fan. Like I'm here.
It's literally like the mind fuck that like Mother did for me. Like I watched Mother and I was like, what's happening?
This is an unpopular opinion, but I actually loved Mother. I absolutely loved it. I know most people don't like it, but like it was just so fucked up and so weird. And it was just like everything I ever wanted.
The whole time I'm watching this movie, Hereditary, I'm just like, whoa. Like I was literally on the edge of my seat like the whole time. It was insane. Like, oh my gosh. Like we're gonna definitely jump into this movie and talk more about the amazing things that make this movie different. But one of them I have to bring it up now. The tongue clicking. Oh my god.
Okay, so as someone who also is writing a horror film right now, I can tell you that these are things that like, or I guess it's a film thing in general, right? Like that character needed to be recognized. Can I spoil it? Is that okay?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. It's been out for a while. So if you haven't seen it, that's your issue. So, at the end of the film when Peter, no, that's not his name.
The brother? Peter.
Oh yeah, it is Peter.
Yeah, the brother, yeah.
Peter's body is inhabited by Charlie's spirit. The only way you'd really know that before they kind of mention it later is by the tongue click. And so it's like, and any time that she's kind of, her spirit is around and the jokester king of hell, whatever, is around, like it's an indicator that those spirits are there. And I just think it's so brilliant. And I love it.
It's so subtle, but it's like the breaking down of a person to like create this new, inhabitant of, that king of the devil, well, one of those kings of the hell.
Right. One of the 8, apparently, which makes me think, because Midsommar isn't a direct sequel. Obviously, the plot has nothing to do with the plot of Hereditary, but it is about essentially a cult worshiping a god. And so it makes me wonder if maybe there's going to be 6 more films with the same theme. And then there's going to be one big film that brings it all together.
Which is very interesting because it does bring all those elements, like you were saying, where you were seeing the pieces as separated as the pieces seem to be, but once the seances started to come into play and like, everyone's starting to kind of become unhinged and rattled and everything, it does start to come together. But I mean, these scenes that play out using the miniatures are so gorgeous, like so gorgeous. I loved how the movie opened with going into a miniature to start the real scene is amazing because I love stuff like that. Like it's just gorgeous. Oh my gosh. And Toni Collette being one of the producers, making this be something that comes to fruition is amazing, because it's just so many people back this movie, but it's so beautiful. Oh my God, the miniatures.
Yeah, and it's like, it's so interesting to me too that like the film itself is an exploration of grief and trauma as it affects a family. It's a little more supernatural than we're used to in a family drama, but but I think it's really poignant in the way that it like represents how this family is dealing with first the death of the grandmother and then the death of Charlie. I just think it's so poetic.
It reminded me a lot of actually The Conjuring, and how the mother was like the most vulnerable and weakest, and that's why she got attacked first, which you really just see that just vulnerability in what mothers go through so much on the daily. And jumping into, actually my favorite character is actually the mom, is Annie. Because I just,
hold on, let's pause, sorry, because there's someone cutting the grass. My favorite character, I think, was Peter. Honestly, I felt like he went through a lot, obviously, and the acting that Nat Wolff does in this film is honestly like beyond his years, and it's a treat to watch every single time. But I also think that Peter is kind of one of the characters with the most growth, because in the beginning he's just like some petulant teenager, like whatever.
Worst brother of the year, by the way.
Right. Like he doesn't really care his grandma's dead. Like he's like, whatever, life goes on. And like he bonds with his dad over not liking the grandma, which is like a little weird, but we don't have to talk about that. But by the end of the film, he's yelling out for his mother. He's yelling mommy. Like he becomes this younger version of himself that was more, I guess, present, more aware, and more in tune with his family. And so I really like watching that journey from like just like surface lame teenager to like tragic ending, but still very much changed person.
Yeah, literally too. But I did write a side note that it's just his ugly crying is something to be remembered.
Listen, men have a hard time being vulnerable on camera, so let him do it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, but I mean, ugly crying like, when it comes to ugly crying though, I do wish that the father would have shown more emotion, because I know he was kind of like the glue that kind of held everything together at one point. He's definitely my least favorite character, because he was just such an unsupportive husband in this time of grief and mourning, and like the explosion at the dinner table, and he's just being like such a jerk. And also just interactions like, in bed, and just not being very understanding. And he was not my favorite character at all.
I think my least favorite character was Joan. Maybe the grandma, but mostly Joan. Not because
Who is Joan?
Joan's the lady that does the seance.
Yeah, that's just what I was saying the whole movie. I was just like, who is Joan?
Yes. And not just because she's the main antagonist, I guess, but just like, I don't know, I don't like that she manipulated a grieving mother. I don't like that clearly the grandmother had some grandiose ideas, and Joan just fucking like went along with it and destroyed a family. Like it makes me so upset. And I just like, I know it was important to the plot to have her, but like, why couldn't we just be happy at the end?
Yeah, it's sad too, because like she picked her up at a place where you're supposed to be getting better, and a place, you know, in therapy where you're supposed to like, which I guess is also another key of just being vulnerable, because she was just telling her story and being so open about it. But it's, oh my gosh, like the realization that Annie has when she realizes, she's like, oh my God, I did this. Like, I welcomed this in. Like, this is my fault. And actually, during the home seance family scene, I like looked over at my partner. I was like, yeah, we're not doing that. Like,
That's not happening.
not happening. No.
Did you watch that documentary on Netflix about the guy that like killed his whole family because he wanted to be with his mistress?
Oh my God, no.
Oh, well, it's a thing. It's on Netflix. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, man, if my future partner wants to cheat on me, like, you know what? Let him go. He does not have to murder me. But it's like the same concept, right? It's like I'm a very spiritual person. I believe in the supernatural. I believe in spirits, but I would never do a seance. Ouija boards? No, absolutely not.
Too much like, you don't know if something's going to be angry, happy,
you don't know what you're hungry. You can't control
really
what
don't.
you're inviting. So
you really don't. And it's just so much starts to unravel, like after, you know, these walls are put down, and there's just things just start to get super intense because the pacing is very slow. But then at the third act, it's just like, boom!
in your face, which I actually really like that about his films, because Midsommar is very similar in that regard. And I think it's, what I really like about it is it's like, he makes you feel really safe, because it's like, oh, it's a family drama, and there's like a little bit of scary stuff, but it's not too bad. And then the third act comes along and it punches you in the gut. And I think that's just so brilliant.
And there's certain scenes that actually like, which tied into the third act being so amazing, which part of my favorite scenes is whenever I saw Annie in the corner. Like I was just sitting there and I was like, oh my God, what is that? What is that? And I was like,
the first time I watched this film, I remember, because I rarely scream at horror films. Like I'm usually like, I'll be like, oh no. But like when she comes out of the wall at Peter, I screamed because I didn't see her. Like when you watch it the first time, you don't see her just standing there, and she just like comes at him. And Mocha, my dog, was like so confused, just like, what's happening? But like watching it again, like now knowing that that was going to happen, I was like, oh, I see it coming. It's not as scary, but it's still really creepy.
It's so creepy. I think only maybe comical when she's like doing this like,
yeah,
like
the floating
thing. That was kind of funny, but those are my favorite scenes for me personally. Between that and the seance at Jones, because that's when that was like for me what I thought was like kind of the climax of like when everything started to just like shit just started to go down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those it was supposed to be hard to have a favorite scene, but what was yours?
Ooh. I think what comes to mind is the scene after the mom finds Charlie dead and her reaction. And I think maybe because I'm an actress too, like that, just like that raw emotion and that display of vulnerability, like really struck me. Even though it's really dark. But for that reason, that's definitely, I think, my favorite in terms of like the craft or whatever. But in terms of entertainment value, honestly, the ending scene where he's going up into the, or I guess she in his body is going up into the, what is it called? Treehouse. And then there's like people everywhere. The treehouse is somehow been
naked
renovated.
Naked person there.
Yeah, like, and it's just like, because it's the culmination of all this crazy stuff that was happening, it's just like mind blown. And so I think in the entertainment side of things, that was my favorite scene. In the technical, I'm an actress and I have to study films side. It's the scene where the mom is like yelling on the floor basically in grief.
It's interesting because the last scene in the treehouse I thought was actually the thing I liked that I noticed was I love how so Charlie likes to make toys and like make dolls, and I thought it was kind of interesting how the statue kind of reminded me of one of Charlie's dolls that she would make.
That's
true. Because it was like a combination of like different things. Yeah. But I thought it was very, very interesting that it had the doll in a sense there. Which was...
I was reading the script actually because I wanted to, because I'm writing one, so I wanted to see like how he wrote that whole ending sequence, because obviously there weren't a lot of lines. So I'm like, how is this in a script? So I read through it and it's actually listed as a mannequin, which is weird, right? Like when you think mannequin, you think like in the store. But I thought that was really interesting that it was listed specifically as a mannequin and not a doll. It was like,
yeah,
like he intended it to be essentially the vehicle in which Charlie returns to the home and then goes into Peter's body. I don't know.
Which is why I saw it as a doll. But yeah, that's very interesting. But but the third act is amazing and it's amazing and all, but the pacing is really what affected my grade, to be honest. My expectation starting out was a C, but it still stayed at a C, unfortunately. The slow pacing and the bad, ugly crying. The miniatures are great, but it just felt like they were trying to put 4 movies into one with this movie, and it felt kind of like the third act does pull everything together, but it didn't feel like there were concrete pieces enough to where it felt like it was cohesive enough for me. But it's a C for me. What is your grade?
I think you know my grade. A++. This bitch is going to Harvard. Like and that may just be because I really like weird movies. I think ultimately it comes down to personal taste, right? Like I said earlier, no one likes Mother. I loved Mother. Like I literally texted one of my friends afterwards. I was like, because he had recommended that I watch it because he hated it. And I texted him, I was like, oh my God, this movie is brilliant. So I think maybe there's something wrong with my brain, but I loved it.
No. These movies are made for certain people, and I'm glad you like them. Definitely. It honestly, I wrote in my notes when I was like watching this movie, I was like, whoosh. Like the whole time I'm just like, just like the whole time when they did like the like electric like whoosh every single time, yeah. Like I need to write that down.
Well, that was something that I looked up after I saw it the first time, because I was like, what is this? Like, why is this like a glitch, or was this intentional? It's intentional. So essentially when there's like that blue light, whatever, it means that the spirit of the trickster is around. So that's why you see it when Charlie is, or I guess not the spirit, but like, because he's a demon, right? Like whatever, his essence is around.
Yeah.
So you first see it when Charlie is drawing in her room at the very beginning of the movie. So that's like eventually when you finish the movie and watch it back, that's your first indication that this has been happening. This has been planned for however many years. Like the grandmother has wanted Charlie to be a boy so that she could inhabit, or so that the demon could inhabit her body and not Peter's body. Like
they had a queen, they just need a king.
Exactly. So it really, and then at the beginning too, you see the mom is talking about like, oh yeah, she fed you, and you're thinking like, oh, she probably gave her like a spoon of food or whatever. And then there's the miniature where the grandmother is holding her boob out for the baby, for Charlie. So it really shows you that, like, there's a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? There's a lot of like layers to that, and the grandma really like is some sort of witch or something, like, and this is passed down through the generation because the mom ends up,
It's hereditary.
the mom ends up having powers. And then, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, it definitely all made sense, but it just took a while to get there for sure. But it definitely, the story is amazing, and I thought it was beautifully told, but definitely for certain beautiful people like Aggie. Yeah, this movie is not something I would have like watched on my own, which is why I'm really glad that you recommended it. It's definitely a good movie to use for spooky season, which is I'm really, really glad I got to put on my docket. I'm so thankful that you got to do this with me. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to do more weird spooky movies together because
we should do another viewing.
Oh my god, you should, because that movie is so confusing, and you're like, wait, it represents what?
I haven't watched it in a while. I'm down.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Aggie, tell everyone about where they can find you, and we're definitely expecting amazing things from you, so shoot away.
You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at The Only Aggie. I'm on Patreon too, which is linked in my bio on my socials. What else? I'm on IMDb. I'm on LinkedIn. But no, the main three are Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And those are all at The Only Aggie.
Perfect. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for another episode of Sarah Homework, and enjoy spooky season and stay weird, guys. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.